The tale of Jehoshaphat unfolds during a period of profound uncertainty, where fear and doubt gripped the hearts of many. As a king devoted to the welfare of his people, Jehoshaphat encountered challenges that few would dare to face. He was not merely a ruler, he was a living testimony to unwavering faith, a beacon of assurance amidst the turmoil. His reign over Judah wasn't characterized by grand military victories or amassed riches, but rather by a steadfast dedication to biblical principles and a deep, intimate connection with the Creator. In this light, the Bible underscores the importance of having strong spiritual foundations, a truth evident in every decision Jehoshaphat made. Yet, like all of us at some point, Jehoshaphat was confronted with a situation that stretched his faith to its very limits. The king, who had stood firm until then, was now faced with a threat that could destroy not only his kingdom, but also his very soul. 3 nations allied against Judah, creating a force so formidable that anyone else might have been overcome by despair. Picture yourself in Jehoshaphat's position, with the fate of thousands resting upon your shoulders, knowing that each decision could mean the difference between life and death. It is in such moments that the teachings of the Bible shine brightest, revealing that even in the darkest times, there is always a divine path to follow. This is exactly the course Jehoshaphat chose. He turned to God. Instead of reaching for weapons, he chose to kneel and lift his hands to the heavens, pleading for guidance. In this act, he provides us with one of the most profound lessons in biblical history: complete trust in God, even when circumstances seem impossible. And you, have you ever faced situations where the solution seemed beyond your grasp? Jehoshaphat's approach reminds us that before reacting on impulse, we should seek the divine voice that often guides us down paths we might never have imagined. As we delve deeper into Jehoshaphat's story, it becomes clear that his choices weren't the product of chance, but of a life steeped in devotion and learning. Like him, we are also called to make decisions that may initially seem counterintuitive, but ultimately reveal the true nature of our faith. By choosing to seek God, Jehoshaphat unlocked a path of miracles that would forever alter the history of Judah. Now, consider what this same faith could achieve in your own life, if applied with equal fervor and dedication. While the people of Judah sought to live in peace, a sinister plot was unfolding in the neighboring lands. The Moabites, Ammonites, and Meunites, peoples who had once been at odds, now joined forces with a singular goal: to annihilate Judah. This alliance was one of the most feared, uniting formidable forces into an army so vast that, from a human perspective, it seemed unbeatable. This story serves as a reminder that in the Bible, forces opposed to faith often marshal themselves in ways that appear overwhelming. When everything around us seems to conspire against us, it's easy to lose sight of the greater power guiding our steps. For the people of Judah, the psychological impact was overwhelming. Fear spread like wildfire, eroding their sense of security. Imagine hearing that powerful enemies are marching toward you, intent on destroying everything you hold dear. In such moments, no human strength can soothe a troubled heart. But it is precisely in these times that faith becomes our anchor, a light piercing through the darkness. Just as the people of Judah faced overwhelming forces, so too do we encounter alliance in our lives, whether external threats or internal struggles that seem determined to bring us down. Jehoshaphat, upon receiving news of this deadly alliance, felt the weight of his responsibility as leader. He knew he could not win this battle with his military strength, and herein lies the greatness of this man. Instead of acting hastily, he stopped to reflect. And this is exactly what the story of the Bible teaches us. In times of crisis, we must seek wisdom and direction before taking any action. Jehoshaphat recognized the gravity of the situation, but instead of despairing, he made a decision that would change the course of this story, showing us that sometimes the greatest act of courage is to stop and seek divine guidance. This is the moment when Jehoshaphat shows us that true leadership is not in displaying power or strength, but in having the humility to recognize our limitations and seek God's help. He reminds us that when we face our own enemies, whether they be financial problems, illness, or emotional challenges, we must first seek divine wisdom. Jehoshaphat, with his example, invites us to do the same, to stop, reflect, and hand our battles into the hands of the one who can do everything. And so the story continues, revealing the next step in this journey of faith and trust. Faced with such an overwhelming threat, Jehoshaphat did what any wise man would do. He turned to God. But he didn't do it alone. He called on all the people of Judah to fast and pray, uniting hearts and minds in one purpose. Imagine the scene. an entire nation silent, abstaining from food in a profound act of devotion and trust. This was a moment of absolute surrender, where hope was not in swords or shields, but in the invisible force that sustains all things. The Bible, with its stories and teachings, repeatedly reminds us that in times of despair, the power of collective prayer can move mountains. Jehoshaphat then went to the temple, the spiritual heart of his people, and there he prayed fervently. He didn't ask for riches, he didn't ask for an easy escape. He asked for wisdom and protection. His words echoed through the halls of the temple, filled with a sincerity that only those who face the impossible know. Jehoshaphat's prayer was a cry for help, a cry for divine intervention in a situation that was beyond his control. And so, he teaches us that, in our own moments of crisis, we must turn to the source of all wisdom and peace, seeking in the Bible the words that will guide us. God's answer was not long in coming. Like a father who hears his child's anguished call, God responded in a way only he could, with comfort and guidance. In the midst of that desolate scenario, God's voice brought hope, showing that he was in control, even when everything seemed lost. This divine response was not only for Jehoshaphat, but also for each of us who, throughout our lives, face battles that seem insurmountable. The biblical story reminds us that, when we pray with faith, God's answer may not be immediate, but it will come at the right time, bringing with it the comfort and strength we so need. And so, with a renewed heart and restored confidence, Jehoshaphat prepared himself for what was to come. He knew he was not alone, that the Creator of the universe was on his side. This is the kind of faith that transforms lives, that allows us to face our own giants with the knowledge that we are not fighting alone. Jehoshaphat's prayer not only changed the course of Judah's history, but it also left an eternal legacy for all who seek answers amid the storms of life. Now, we approach the moment when God's voice will become even clearer, guiding Jehoshaphat to an action that few expected. In the midst of all that anguish and despair, God raised up a man named Jahaziel, a Levite from the lineage of Asaph. It was as if, in the midst of chaos and confusion, a bright light appeared, bringing clarity and direction. Jahaziel stood up in the midst of the congregation and, with a voice that seemed to echo from the heavens, proclaimed the divine message: "Do not be afraid or dismayed because of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's." Imagine the impact of these words for a people who already saw themselves defeated. This is the power of biblical teachings. One right word at the right time can transform hopelessness into unshakable faith. Jahaziel's revelation was a powerful reminder that even when we are surrounded by problems that seem insurmountable, God fights our battles. He tells us not to fear, for what we see with our eyes is not the complete truth. Biblical stories are full of moments like this, where the impossible becomes possible through divine intervention. Jahaziel's prophecy was not only a message of comfort, but also a spiritual strategy. Do not fight in your own strength, but trust completely in God. And how difficult it is for us, in our humanity, to hand everything over to the Creator and simply trust. The people of Judah, upon hearing these words, were seized by new strength. The fear that once paralyzed their hearts began to dissipate, replaced by a courage that only faith can provide. The people's reaction shows us that, when God speaks, something inside us changes. It is as if a flame was lit in the midst of darkness, guiding our steps and strengthening our spirit. Today, we may see ourselves reflected in these people, facing daily battles that overwhelm us, but the story of the Bible assures us that, like Judah, we can find hope in the voice of God. And so, with Jahaziel's message engraved in their hearts, the people prepared to face their enemies, not with weapons, but with praise. Divine strategy was at work, and Jehoshaphat knew that this battle would be won in a way that no man could predict. The prophecy not only changed Judah's destiny, but it also reminds us to this day that when God speaks, we must listen and act in faith. With a heart full of trust in the prophetic word, Jehoshaphat made a decision that defied all human logic. He prepared his army not with swords and spears at the front, but with songs and praises. Imagine an army marching onto the battlefield, not with armed warriors at the forefront, but with singers extolling the name of God. This image may seem strange, even reckless, but it is exactly what biblical teachings reveal to us about the true nature of faith. The story of the Bible teaches us that when we trust God fully, He transforms weapons of war into instruments of peace. Jehoshaphat, with unshakable faith, organized his troops in a way that many would consider madness. He placed the Levites in the front line, singing hymns of praise as they marched toward the enemy. Here, the power of praise is revealed as a powerful spiritual weapon. While other kings would have placed their trust in weaponry and numbers, Jehoshaphat trusted in the power of God, expressing this through worship. And you, have you tried facing your daily battles with praise on your lips, trusting that God is ahead? This practice can transform your day and open doors that seemed closed. The power of praise is not just symbolic. It creates an environment where God's presence can manifest itself in powerful ways. Praise precedes victory, not because it makes us physically stronger, but because it aligns our hearts with the divine will. Jehoshaphat understood this and acted according to the guidance received, demonstrating a practical and deep faith. These days, we often forget the power of simply praising God in the midst of difficulties. The Bible reminds us, through this story, that praise is a key that opens the heavens and connects us with divine power. And so, with songs echoing across the valleys and mountains, the army of Judah marched into what would be one of the most extraordinary battles in biblical history. Jehoshaphat knew that regardless of what they encountered on the battlefield, they had already won. For the battle was not theirs, but God's. The march of faith continued, leading the people of Judah to an unexpected encounter with the miracle. And this is where we wonder, what happened when they arrived on the battlefield? When Jehoshaphat's army finally reached the battlefield, they were met with an unimaginable sight. Instead of finding an enemy organized and prepared for combat, they saw a scenario of absolute chaos. The nations that had united against Judah were destroyed, not by human hands, but by the confusion that God sowed among them. The Moabites, Ammonites, and Meunites, in an act of utter desperation and deceit, turned on each other until none were left to tell the tale. This is how the story of the Bible reveals to us the power of the God of Israel. He fights our battles in ways we could never imagine. In the middle of that valley, which would later be called the Valley of Baraka, Jehoshaphat and his people experienced a miracle that would redefine their lives. The fear and anxiety that once weighed heavily on their hearts were replaced by a feeling of wonder and gratitude. And here is the great lesson of biblical teachings. God doesn't just deliver us, He surprises us with His wonders. How many times in our lives have we seen problems that seemed insurmountable be solved in ways we never would have predicted? The story of Jehoshaphat is a living testimony that when we put our trust in God, He works the impossible. As the people's eyes adjusted to the reality of the miracle before them, another stunning fact revealed itself. The ground was strewn with spoils, riches, weaponry, and resources that rightfully now belonged to Judah. What should have been a battlefield became a field of blessing, a place where God's favor was poured out abundantly. This is the Valley of Baraka, which means Valley of Blessing, a name that would forever remind the people of Judah of God's power and faithfulness. And today, we too can transform our battlefields into valleys of blessings by trusting in the divine plan. Jehoshaphat's army spent days collecting the blessings left by their enemies, an act that symbolized the abundance that God provides to those who trust in Him. And so, instead of blood and tears, the Baraka Valley was marked by gratitude and praise. Jehoshaphat's unexpected victory was not just a matter of survival, but a glorious demonstration of what it means to live under God's protection. Now, imagine the return of these blessed people to Jerusalem, with their hearts overflowing with joy and adoration. After the surprising victory in the Valley of Baraka, Jehoshaphat and his people began the journey back to Jerusalem. But this was not a simple return march. Each step was marked by songs of gratitude, praises that echoed everywhere, proclaiming the wonders that God had accomplished. Imagine a people who, with grateful hearts, walk back to their city, carrying not only material spoils, but also the living certainty of divine power and protection. This scene reminds us that biblical teachings are not limited to the battlefield. They continue in our daily lives, in every gesture of gratitude and recognition for what God does for us. In the Valley of Baraka, the people had experienced divine provision so abundantly that they decided to consecrate that place as an eternal memorial. They called it the Valley of Blessing, a name that reflected the complete transformation of a scene of potential destruction into a symbol of life and prosperity. In doing so, Jehoshaphat and his people show us that it is essential that we recognize the places and moments in our lives where God has acted mightily. And you, do you have any Valley of Blessing in your history? A place or time where divine intervention was so clear that it deserves to be remembered and celebrated? When they finally reached Jerusalem, the temple, the spiritual heart of the nation, was filled with the sounds of praise and worship. This was not just a celebration of victory, but a deep thanksgiving, a complete surrender of the heart to the God who had transformed fear into joy. Jehoshaphat led his people not only in battle, but also in worship, reminding everyone that what truly sustains a nation is its faith in God. The story of the Bible teaches us that after battle, victory is sealed with gratitude, and this gratitude must be expressed through praise. The temple celebration was not just an event, but a moment of spiritual renewal, where each individual had the opportunity to reflect on what had happened and how God was present in their lives. They knew that that triumph was not the result of their own strength, but of the direct intervention of the Creator. And so Jehoshaphat's story challenges us to be grateful not just in great moments of victory, but in all circumstances, recognizing that every blessing, big or small, is a gift from heaven. Now, with their hearts full of praise, the people of Judah prepared to enjoy a new time of peace. What did the future hold for them now that God had delivered them from their enemies? After the miraculous triumph, Judah experienced a period of peace that few kingdoms in biblical history could boast of. This peace was not just the absence of war, but a tranquility that stemmed from the certainty that God was in control of all things. The people, who once feared for their lives and their nation, now lived in security and confidence. This is the reward for the unshakable faith that Jehoshaphat demonstrated by fully trusting in God. It's a powerful reminder that when we put our trust in the Lord, He grants us a peace that passes all understanding. The surrounding nations, who had once united to destroy Judah, now looked with respect and fear upon this small kingdom protected by such a powerful God. The reputation of Jehoshaphat and his people grew, not through their military conquests, but through their demonstration of God's power in their lives. This teaches us that often it is not through force or violence that we gain respect, but through demonstrating our faith and trust in the divine. Biblical stories are full of examples where true strength manifests itself in total dependence on God. This peace brought not only tranquility, but also prosperity to Judah. With their enemies subdued and divine protection secured, the kingdom flourished, and the nation reaped the rewards of victory. Jehoshaphat witnessed his people thrive, both materially and spiritually. The faith they displayed during the crisis was met with a season of growth and abundance. This is how God operates. He guides us through trials, fortifies our faith, and then blesses us beyond what we could have anticipated. Today, as we face our own struggles, we can trust that God has peace and prosperity waiting for those who remain steadfast in their faith. The experience of Jehoshaphat and the people of Judah reminds us that after the storm comes the calm. This calm, this period of peace, serves as an opportunity to reflect on the lessons learned and to prepare ourselves for future challenges, all while trusting that God is with us. The faith that moved mountains then is still available to us today. Now, with Judah at peace and flourishing, the story shifts to the profound lessons this journey imparts. Jehoshaphat's story is not merely an ancient tale, it is a living source of biblical wisdom that can transform our lives today. His faith demonstrates that even when circumstances seem stacked against us, it is possible to fully trust in God. In our daily battles, whether they are spiritual, emotional, or physical, the Bible encourages us to follow Jehoshaphat's example and put our faith into action. You may be facing a situation that seems insurmountable. Remember, the same faith that brought Jehoshaphat victory is available to you if you choose to trust in God's plan. The power of praise, as revealed through Jehoshaphat's divine strategy, teaches us that worshiping God in the midst of difficulties is not just an act of faith, but a powerful weapon against the forces that oppress us. In moments when life challenges us, instead of complaining or giving up, we can choose to praise, knowing that praise opens doors and breaks chains. The Bible is full of stories where praise transformed impossible situations. Have you ever tried praising God in the midst of your struggles? This simple act can drastically change your outlook and eventually your situation. More than a military triumph, Jehoshaphat's story is a lesson in God's sovereignty. It reminds us that even when we don't understand what's happening, God is in control of everything. This truth should shape our lives, especially when we are tempted to take matters into our own hands during moments of despair. Reflecting on Jehoshaphat's story, we are challenged to place our absolute trust in God, knowing that He works for the good of those who love Him. This means that in all circumstances, we can rest assured that God is in charge. The legacy of Jehoshaphat echoes through the ages, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the Bible and in the hearts of those who seek to live by faith. His story is not just about military victories or broken alliances, but about a faith that withstood the toughest tests and emerged stronger. Jehoshaphat shows us that true spiritual leadership is not in wielding power or strength, but in trusting God above all else. His example continues to inspire faith and courage, reminding us that when we place our trust in God, there is no battle that cannot be won. Jehoshaphat's influence extended beyond his own life. He guided an entire nation from a time of crisis to a period of peace and prosperity. His story teaches us that our acts of faith have far-reaching effects, impacting not just ourselves but those around us as well. As Christians, we are called to emulate Jehoshaphat's example, leading with faith and trust in God, no matter the circumstances. The legacy we leave can be as powerful as Jehoshaphat's if we choose to live with the same courage and determination. Jehoshaphat's story also challenges us to consider how we apply these biblical teachings in our own lives. Every decision, every act of faith, contributes to the legacy we leave for future generations. Jehoshaphat wasn't perfect, but he knew where to turn in times of need, and that made all the difference. We can learn from his choices, applying these principles in our daily lives, and building a legacy of faith that endures through the ages. The Bible, with its stories and teachings, equips us to live a life of purpose and impact. As we conclude this journey through Jehoshaphat's story, we are encouraged to put the lessons we've learned into practice. His life is a testament to what God can accomplish through someone who fully trusts him. We are challenged to follow in his footsteps, living in a way that honors God and inspires others to do the same. So, what will you do with this knowledge? How will you apply these lessons of faith in your own life to ensure that Jehoshaphat's legacy continues to live on through you? If you're interested in having a Bible like the one we use in our studies, check out the link in the first pinned comment. If you enjoy our content and can support our channel, consider buying us a coffee through Buy Me a Coffee. Additionally, if you can purchase a crucifix, we also have a link in the first pinned comment. We greatly appreciate your support. God bless, and see you in the next video.